Welcome to GateCrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking the door, open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. My name is Ashley, and I use she, her pronouns.
And my name is Dan. My pronouns are he, him.
And today's discussion is all about that online guilty pleasure that is fanfiction. Dan and I needed to go to experts for this one, so joining us today are the podcasting team behind the Fic List, Erin and Alan. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello. How are you?
Thanks for coming.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us. I would like to maybe add a disclaimer. Experts is a strong word. Knowledgeable. Enthusiasts. Yes, absolutely.
That's fine. We're here at GateCrashers. We love to talk about things that we love. So if you guys love fan fiction, that's all that matters. So as far as like Dan and I'm not sure how much experience you have, Dan, but my experience is pretty much just Lord of the Rings fan fiction from the early 2000s when the internet was very new and fan fiction was also very new. I tried my hand at my own fanfic in middle school, but nothing really came of that, as you know. Yeah, that's fine, actually. I found it recently. We did a Lord of the Rings episode a couple months ago, so I dug out my treasure trove of my old stuff, and I found my Legolas fan fiction that was...
Yes!
Yeah, middle school Ashley and her crush on Legolas was interesting to read and go back and look at. It's for the best that nothing
middle
came
school
from that.
Ashley? As if it went away?
No, it didn't go away.
Yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, Ashley, middle school Erin was writing self-insert Newsies fanfic around then.
That's like one of my favorite musicals.
Yes!
We've been trying to get Dan to watch Newsies forever.
You must.
Dan's never seen it.
You must, Dan. Oh, you didn't know what can of worms you were opening by having us on your podcast.
Oh, boy.
Newsies. Come on, Dan.
My experience is fanfiction, nothing. I used to text-based roleplay for a very long time. It's actually how I met my partner. So I've been dating Scarlett for almost 6 years now. And we met over 10 years ago.
Wow.
Fanfiction itself, though, I have no real experience in other than like reading some of the wilder ones. Like we had a Zoom a couple weeks ago where I read everybody my favorite one, which is where Wario becomes president and legalizes abortion.
Yeah.
So that's about...
I think that's great.
Classic.
That's about where my experience with fanfiction is. You know what? Mm-hmm. Hold on, let me get a little unhinged here. Let me show you my my real virtual... No one can see this as we are as an audio medium, but this is my typical...
This is his normal background.
This is my normal background.
My God. It's glorious. I love it.
It's buff Wario without his shirt. So
good.
I want you to
did
capture
it get
that
warm
in your
here?
mind's eye.
It's just me?
I feel it. Now I feel it.
Wow. Perception.
So clearly we did need to find some fanfic enthusiasts to really help us fill in the gaps here for our GateCrasher listeners. So before we really start diving into fanfic, we start everything out with the most serious question you could possibly be asked in the world, and that is, what is your favorite sandwich?
Oh.
Alan, do you want to go first?
Question.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I feel like I have the diet of a college freshman who has never lived away from their parents, because my diet subsists entirely of like ham and cheese and like instant ramen.
Yeah.
But probably oh my God, it's a sausage, egg, and cheese. Any kind of bread. I think I love breakfast foods. I would eat breakfast for all 3 meals. So that.
Very versatile.
I'm a very simple boy, I would say. TM.
I really completely forgot that breakfast sandwiches were an option here. It didn't even occur to me. Wow. Oh, goodness. Well, I have a silly answer, which is that my on the rare occasions that I drink the alcohol, and I will be at home, my brother will make me a BLT. And so it's specifically the drunk BLT that my brother will make for me. There's some nostalgia there. It's always the best when you've had a little bit of tequila. And so that's my favorite sandwich. But breakfast sandwich is also a fantastic choice. You're so right.
Especially when drunk also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is the Drunk Blt literally just a BLT, but with you being drunk?
Yes.
Incredible. No notes.
I like that.
And
a condition.
Yeah. And Alan knows this. I drink alcohol approximately like 5 times every like 10 years. So it's like a very rare thing. But yeah, my brother will just walk up to me with a plate and be like, you need sustenance, child, because you don't do this very often. Here you go. And he's so awesome. Right.
Now that we've gotten that out of the way, back to our topic at hand. What, in your words, is fan fiction for the folks at home?
A fantastic question. A question for the ages. One that I think has many different answers depending on your relationship to fan fiction.
Let's just give as vague and gray an answer as possible. Yeah, that's a good
place to start.
Yeah. I mean, I guess really fan fiction is a type of transformative work, right? You take an original source material and you are redoing it in your own, using your own words and with your own stories. So you're taking characters you know and love in places you know and love and telling a new narrative. So that to me is sort of the broadest way you can describe it and define it, is a transformative work through literature, writing, creative writing, however you want to go that. If you want to go to literature, you can. But yeah. Alan, does that about cover it?
Yeah. I let Erin do a lot of the like really academic speaking because she's so much smarter than I am and much more concise. I bring the jokes, and that's what I've got for you today.
He's entirely incorrect in that, but yeah.
Well, what got you guys into reading fan fiction to begin with?
Alan, do you want to start?
Sure thing. Well, mine was pretty strictly because of the kind of absence of queer media or any kind of like, I loved to read when I was younger. One of the times that I ever got in trouble in elementary was because I had 2 books open because I was trying to do this experiment where I read one chapter and then, or like went page to page between different books. It didn't work out well. But when I was like 12, 13, around the age when, young queer people or people of any age start to kind of realize, there's attractions to other folks. I realized, I don't think I'm straight. Whoops. That's unfortunate. And so I was trying to like look for any kind of books that would kind of talk about what that experience might look like. And there was just like a lot of nothing, or any of the movies around the time were also all just so sad and depressing. And it was always like bittersweet endings and things that could have been, or like the AIDS epidemic storylines were like through the roof. And I just, I was looking for something that offered me hope, or that gave me some sort of feeling of belonging. And so I stumbled onto, what better way than to like follow characters that you love and just grabbing them and saying, now kiss.
Yeah.
That was what I started doing it for. That's why I started reading fan fiction for.
I deeply regret asking you to go first because my answer is way less thoughtful. I stumbled across some Green Day fan fiction on Quizilla.com and thought, yes, this is wonderful. I love this. I'm going to spend the rest of my days enjoying this. And I did. So I got really into it just because I don't know, I read a lot as a kid. I also had the like experience of getting yelled at for reading multiple books when I was supposed to be doing science class. But it wound up sort of shifting gears into just being really into fanfic. I found it, really liked it, kept doing it, refused to talk about it, did not own it, was like deeply ashamed of it for many years until I met Alan, and then we were like, we should talk about this on the internet. That's a good idea. So now here we are. But yeah, I definitely started in what's called bandom, aka band fandom of the emo variety. Yeah.
Bandom.
It was big.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bop around a bit because you actually touched on something I've later, but Why do you think there's such shame around fan fiction?
Oh, I think there's shame around fandom in general, and I think fanfic is one of the more vulnerable aspects of fandom to a degree, particularly if you write it, but reading it too. With fan art, I think it can sometimes feel like less of an extension of yourself or less revealing of yourself, perhaps. And so with fan fiction, like the types of fanfic you read can say a lot about you, for better or worse, or it can kind of point to things that you are interested in a way that feels extremely vulnerable. And I think we've also been taught like fanfic, for better or worse, is often sexual in nature, and there is sort of an inherent shame around that as well. So the combination of factors there, I think, really can lead people to not want to talk about it, right? And just be really protective of it. I think that has actually started to shift pretty seismically in the last couple of years. Like, I cannot imagine doing this podcast 5 years ago. People did not talk about fanfic before.
No, and I feel like it goes hand in hand a little bit with romance literature in general, like published romance literature, because the same pitfalls happen between the two of them. Like, you don't want to tell people you're reading romance. You don't want to tell people you're reading fan fiction. But I actually, to your point, feel like book talk, as toxic as it can be sometimes, has really opened up the door for people to find others that love the things that they love and really have a place to talk about it and not feel shameful.
Yeah, I fully agree. The internet has had a huge piece of the puzzle of making fanfiction something that we are all willing to talk about.
Yeah.
And to a degree, I think it was a kind of a matter of time, because the internet, like, the personal becomes public very quickly. And so inevitably that sort of happened. One of the things you said at the top of the show that I thought was interesting, it's like when fan fiction was quote unquote new. Fan fiction is not new by any stretch of the imagination. Like, not to like throw shade, but I mean,
no, you're right.
Fan fiction has a long and interesting history. You can go back to the 60s when, you know, basically people were sending each other Spock, Kirk fanfic by mail, writing zines, sharing them IRL. Like, this has been around for decades, if not longer than that. And you can make a whole argument that folk storytelling is a type of fan fiction. We're not going to go there, but
I mean, the Bible is pretty much just Jesus fan fiction, isn't it?
We can get into a whole long discussion about what fan fiction is. But I mean, I think we are just in an era of sort of sharing and talking about it in a way that is unprecedented. So.
Yeah, and just like even the way we treat our fan fiction, like when I go back to like finding the fanfic that I had, it was also bound together with like some stuff I had printed out from the internet, from like printers when you had the holes on the side of the paper. Like, it was really old, and I clearly loved it so much that I used ink to print that out. Like, it was a big deal. And now you've got people on, and again, TikTok, like physically printing, bounding, and really putting so much videos. love into these works that really spoke to them. And I mean, and that goes along with like fan art and how you marry all of these different ways that you fall in love with characters. But it's just really been such a change in tone from what I recall earlier on, which was like hiding it in a binder and not telling anybody.
Definitely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to jump in because something you said, Alan, caught me. Do you find that fan fiction is a tool that people use to read or write stories that haven't really been allowed to exist previously? Like with the queer narratives and things like that, you see a lot of that in stories when sometimes the actual IPs don't allow it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. It's seeing yourself reflected in a character that you watch or that you love or that you have read, that you've interacted with in any kind of way, and being like, I feel like that is me. And so there's a part of almost like one of the things that fanfic does really well is this kind of like wish fulfillment. So sometimes it's about, you know, your characters don't get a happy ending. Like I was mentioning, you know, a bunch of queer media, Brokeback Mountain, spoilers. Sorry. Also, it's been out nearly 20 years. So
you're good.
What, like, wanting to see like a happy ending and wanting to like know that that's something that could happen, and watching other people kind of write those narratives and write those endings that you so desperately want to hear. Or even just something as simple as, this is something that I come across a lot because I'm very sentimental, very emotion-based. I'm a Scorpio, I'm a water sign.
Soft boy Alan makes an appearance.
Soft boy Alan, indeed. But it's just like, you know, I haven't been in a relationship in a while. What is it like to feel that like comfort, you know, like that fluff, the warmth that comes from those kind of characters? I think that fanfic is a way for people to kind of process these desires, these wishes.
Yeah, so we're actually, if all of these, our listeners are hearing all these things about fanfiction, where can they actually go to find it? What are some good locations for them to be able to read fanfiction?
There is a website. It's called Archive of Our Own. Write that down.
.org.
And yeah, no, I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can find fanfiction on the internet. The journey of how we got to Archive of Our Own is a podcast episode unto itself. But I think Archive of Our Own is the most well-known and the most prolific because it is, I think, the best. I will say for me, it is the best because it is one of the best platforms and best ways of filtering fanfic and finding the thing that you want.
User-friendly.
It is extremely user-friendly. It's designed to be extremely navigable, and it really helps you sort of curate your own experience in a way. So I always send people to Archive of Our Own first. There are, of course, other ways and other places to find fanfic. Fanfic.net still exists. I know.
Yeah, I feel like that's where I was reading it.
Yeah. It was the website for a long time.
Long time, yeah. And then, I mean, there's Wattpad, but I'm not particularly familiar with that, so I can't speak to it. And then there are, of course, fanfiction, like there are fandom communities where you can usually find folks writing some kind of fic. Like if you go on Tumblr, you can find fanfic there. It may not be a platform specifically designed for fanfic the way AO3 is, but it's there. So there are a lot of ways to come across it, but I usually recommend Archive of Our Own as the place to start.
And now when you were talking about like narrowing it down and like searchability, especially on like the first couple episodes of your podcast, I know, and I haven't gotten like all the way to the end yet, but are you still doing tags as your like episodes? So like when I was listening to it, I didn't even realize that like tags were a thing or that you could put them in. So could you explain to people what tags are and then how that would help them find what they're looking for? Definitely.
Alan, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So, and Erin's going to have to correct me because I notoriously do not read the tags because I'm a dumb boy.
Which I cannot even fathom in my life. I read every tag.
Listen, sometimes I don't want spoilers, but the most broad like definition of a tag that I can give you is like they're categories. They're things that like genres that you can explore. So there's things like first dates. What would your characters look like if they went on a first date, or college alternative universe stories where you put them in college, and all of these kind of broad stroke specific categories. There's also things that are a little more general. So like sick fic is one of them, where one of your characters is sick and have to be taken care of. Again, touching on that like kind of warmth, wanting comfort. You've got things like angst, which is pretty self-explanatory, and a ton of other really great terms that I'll let Erin touch on. And then they also, in Archive of Our Own, at least, they allow people to submit tags that are not on their system. So things, like trigger warnings or, major character deaths. So the possibilities are endless as far as how you choose what you want to read. So because I'm a soft boy, I never read major character death or even minor character death fan fiction. It's not for me. But if someone wants to feel a little pain, wants to cry a little, wants some catharsis, that's available to them. Erin, did I miss anything?
No, not at all. You did great.
Thanks.
I think one thing that is helpful in understanding tagging is, one, the sort of history of it. It comes from exactly what Alan was talking about on internet spaces trying to create safety for people and being able to say, hey, I'm going to tag this as these couple of things. These could potentially be triggering for you. If that's not for you, then skip this one. And that's really sort of the ethos behind tagging, which I really appreciate. And I think we often think about literature, movies, whatever, in terms of genre. as sort of focusing on the type of story that's being told, fanfiction tagging is actually often more about content, like what the thing is going to be. So exactly what Alan was talking about was, sick fic or college AU. I like that you went with first date and college AU because those are our two most recent episodes. I was like, those must be top of mind.
I'm a simple boy.
Hey, you're doing great. You can expect that is going to be the premise of the thing that you are about to read. It's very literal. So I find that really, really useful in terms of just managing expectations. Like tagging is a way of communicating with your reader what they're in for and setting expectations from the jump, which is also why it baffles me that Alan doesn't read the text. I'm like, don't you want to know what you're in for? But ever to each their own in terms of fandom experience.
It really wasn't actually until I started listening to your podcast that I recognized that tags weren't just the name of the thing that you're talking about, like Marvel or Star Wars, like the big thing that it was going to be about. It would be about smaller things. So that was actually a great thing that your podcast taught me because I really had no idea. It really opened up the world of like what fan fiction could be because I just didn't realize, even though I had my toe dipped in the water a little bit. Yeah. It was a great explanation. So speaking of your podcast, what made you start it?
Lots of things. So we did a different podcast before this one with a couple of friends from our old workplace. And while we were recording that podcast, which was about spooky things like ghosts and all kinds of weird stuff, me and Alan were on the floor. And I don't remember exactly what sparked the conversation, but at one point fanfiction came up and I was like, so do you read the fan fiction? He was like, do you read the fan? Yes. And we realized we both read fan fiction and we're interested in about it. And that really led to us being like, you know what? A lot of the podcasts that we hear about fan fiction, we get why it makes sense, but they're really focusing on like the weirdest thing you can find on the internet. Let's talk about this weird sex thing and make fun of it. And we were like, but we like fan fiction and we don't want to make fun of it. And there's a reason why people read this and write it and enjoy it so much. There's merit to this. So that was the sort of impetus for the way that we structured our podcast and why we committed early on to being like, this is going to be sincere. There's no shitting on it. There's no making fun of this. It'll be silly because it's fanfic, but it will not come from a place of making fun or punching down. It's going to be a celebration.
I love that. And what to you actually makes a good fanfic? Like what, obviously at some point it's personal, but what ticks all the boxes for you as far as like an enjoyable fic?
I mean,
yeah, I'm still waiting to figure out what that is for Erin. I'm still shooting in the dark whenever I send fanfics to her.
That's not fair. You send me good stuff all the time. I have sent the most fanfics that have been rated a 5 on our podcast, though. So
on a completely arbitrary scale, yes.
Yeah, a completely arbitrary scale that's deeply influenced by whether or not I've eaten today. I think every fanfic has its own merits, and sometimes something that really hits or really like feels good one day could be not the thing I'm looking for the next. But I think the thread of what I enjoy in a fanfic is something that successfully conveys the heart and soul of the characters that I love and really gives sort of like an interesting new take on what it is or the thing. Almost all of my ships, the ships that I like go hard for are ones with missed potential. That tends to be the thing that I'm looking for is like, all right, these characters were clearly set up, Quelliot, to be a pairing, Quelliot, in the show. And the show failed me. And now I want to like explore what could have been. And so the best fan fictions that I've read have found some kind of heart and soul in that and followed it out and spun it out to some kind of really satisfying conclusion.
So I've been in nerd stuff forever, but what is a Quelliot?
Oh boy.
You haven't gotten to that episode in our podcast, have you?
Who are they?
So it's Quentin and Elliot from The Magicians, and longtime listeners of the Fic List.
Oh, I know. Never mind. No, I know. I watched it too. I know.
The correct reaction.
Yeah. So if you know, you know is the deal. Yeah. But yeah, talk about missed potential. Anyway, they are my OTP, one true pairing. The ship to end all ships for me, which is why I bring them up. But yeah,
I knew that one too.
Yeah.
I'm always proud of it. When I'm on these episodes where like I know absolutely nothing about the topic, when someone says something, I'm like, oh hey, I got that.
Yeah.
All right, so yours is fanfictions about Quilliot.
Yes.
Alan, has there ever been a fic that you have enjoyed more than the source material?
Ooh.
You can have this one too, Erin.
It's fine.
I feel like I know the answer.
I mean, yeah.
That's a great question. And I notoriously don't watch things. I have a fear of commitment that I'm working through with my therapist. So I haven't watched a lot of like TV shows. So like I never watched The Magicians. I don't watch anything long form. I've gotten better. But that being said, that means I read a lot of fanfic specifically because of the show for fandoms that I'm not in. So, you know, I've recently read a phenomenal supernatural fan fiction that I, you know, no knowledge of the show itself, but it was incredible. Yeah, literally changed my life the way it was written. It was beautiful and it was literally literature. I think we mentioned on that podcast. It was like it changed the way I think about life, and it was wonderful.
So, despite not knowing the fandom well, like you just connected with the story itself rather than having this show knowledge and then putting it to a fiction.
Yeah, and I find that for me, to go back to the like what makes a good fanfic for me, is like oftentimes the storytelling is what has to be the most engaging for me, because I don't read typically fan fiction for the characters necessarily. Sometimes I do. You know, I have my comfort pairings that whenever I just want to feel warm, I go to them. But oftentimes I'm more so interested, like, oh, I feel like reading about a librarian today. So I'll go and look at some librarian fics, and whichever one strikes my fancy and is like well written, I'm there for.
I love that. Like I think it's as you're saying, like punching up, and it's so earnest about it. Like you're engaging with something despite not like coming to it from the other thing. So it's more about the fiction rather than the IP. So I really like that. Erin, what is there any special other than The Magicians? Is there anything that you've enjoyed more?
Ooh, well.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because without the original, there is no fan fiction, if that makes sense. So on the one hand, yeah, of course, there are stories that I've read in certain fandoms, not just The Magicians, but other ones where I was like, this author understands these characters on such a deep and visceral level, and the story is so interesting, and man, this is the new canon for me. Like, this is the truth. But the reason I sort of come to fan fiction is because of some kind of interest in the original, right? So yeah, I don't know that I can. I mean, yeah, there are definitely fan fictions that I've enjoyed more than the source material, but
an ending. Has there been an ending of a show or a movie or something that you've enjoyed a fan fiction ending more of?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like many. I am deep in the Steve Harrington and Eddie Munson feels right now from Stranger Things. That is more of a spoiler because that is fairly recent, but like I'm upset with what they did to Eddie, and I was like, never mind. This didn't happen in canon. Look at them. Just like two single dads who work two jobs raising a gaggle of children. And so, yeah, I mean, in terms of endings, usually, yeah, they're usually fan fictions. I prefer those to the canon endings. I think canon is a great setup for fan fiction.
But fan canon saves the day.
Oh, yeah. It's fanon.
Fanon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, look at you, Danny. You got it.
Yeah, good job.
I know. Okay, so this has been, like, since I heard the word, I have to ask. I got yours already, Erin. Alan and Ashley, who are your OTPs? Putting you on the spot.
Mine are just really embarrassing.
That's fine. No, go for embarrassment. I like it.
Well, the pairing that I started reading for was Naruto and Sasuke from the anime Naruto. And then the other one that I was always near and dear in my heart is Harry and Draco from Harry Potter. I love a good enemies to lovers dynamic. I love the tension. I love some banter. It's great.
It's funny you say that. I've never, like, I've just figured out how to get fanfic on my Kindle.
Oh my god, a whole new world.
I know, it really was. The first thing I downloaded was, it was Draco and Hermione, because it was all over the internet. So I was like, if people are telling me this is good, I should read it.
Give it a
So
shot.
I think I got Manacled. Is that one? I think that's the one I got. And then Breath Mints and Battle Scars.
Ooh.
Sounds right.
No,
I haven't
I've not
started
heard of
them yet, but I just downloaded them, so I'm going to give them a try.
Let me know what you think. It's not a pairing I usually think of.
No, so wherever I'm at on TikTok, that's the biggest thing. Draco Hermione fanfic. I tried telling my husband about it, and he's like, "I'm sorry, what?" I'm like, "It's everywhere. I have to read it now."
After you.
I don't know. I think my original pairing was just Legolas and myself.
The classic.
So valid.
Yeah.
So valid.
Absolutely.
That was the only thing that I cared about. So I'm trying to dip my toe into new things, new couples. We'll see how it goes.
I love this journey for you.
Thank you.
It's a good one.
Dan, did you have one?
I do.
Who's yours?
It's real now though. It was Harley Ivy, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy.
Ooh, a great one.
So for a while, DC was like real into it, and they're like, they didn't say it, they never said it, but it was there. And then one day, piece of shit Dan Didio was like, no, can't have this anymore. And they just started calling them best friends. So if you ever read a review that I write about queer characters in DC Comics, I will make sure I put in bold best friends is somewhere around there, because for a long time I had to deal with that. But then something just clicked, and they were like, no, they're gay. Like, it's just, that's it. That's game over. And now we've got it in television. We've got it in every medium has just committed, and the company themselves has committed to queer characters a lot more, which is something that's very important. So that was always my one true one. After you said Naruto, the only thing that was in my head was Frieza and Goku, but I was like, no, you can't say that.
I mean, you could. There's a world out there for you, Daniel.
I love Frieza. I'm a big Orochimaru fan too. I'm just getting into anime. My brother has finally broken me down. And Naruto is one that I'm
nice.
It's like 9,000 episodes into.
Sure is.
So.
It sure is. But you're gonna have a blast.
Yeah, I love. Rock Lee's my
god,
my favorite.
He's so funny, so cool.
Such a good kid.
Yeah.
I have a Rock Lee rug right next to me, but Harl Ivy is probably my go-to.
I'm so happy that your OTP is a true one that
I got
is
it.
going. Congratulations.
Oh, I've got one that no one is going to know except maybe like one person that listens to the show. Adam X the Extreme, he's an X-Men, and Boom Boom, also an X-Men. He's in like 6 issues, but I feel like they're the perfect group. And another time. So, since you've started to really get in, I've been reading fanfiction. Have you seen any trends or evolutions in the writing or the way people talk about it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. The trajectory of fanfiction over time has been sort of wild to watch. I think in the maybe last 5-10 years, I think what we've seen is something of a centralization of fanfiction online, where fanfiction used to really exist in sort of individual fandom communities. And you would usually find like a live journal page or like a Yahoo group or someplace where you were really writing fanfiction for a specific character or original like IP or whatever. So you would have your like Xena boards, and there would only be Xena fanfic there, and it would be sort of isolated communities. The trend now is to have fanfiction kind of all in one place. So in the same place that you can find Marvel fanfic, you can find Harry Potter, you can find anime, you can find it all. And so some of the individual sort of quirks of those fandom communities have been kind of lost over time, and there's pros and cons to this kind of shift. But it does mean that there's sort of an online parlance to fanfiction and talking about fanfiction that is now more sort of universalized. We've sort of lost our accents, if that makes any sense. Yeah. And so that has been an interesting shift to be part of, because I certainly, back in the day when I sort of Fandom was its own thing, and then my first show that I was reading fan fiction about was Glee. Please don't judge me.
No. Please. We love Glee.
Perfect.
Okay, guys.
Actually, I feel like you and I are going to be best friends. So
From the first to last episode, too.
Yeah.
Like, I watched it
Yeah,
every
Dan
week.
loves Glee.
yes. Oh my
Amazing.
goodness. Yes.
Huge Glee fan.
Fantastic. Oh my God. Okay. We have to talk about that at a later date. But so, that was really the one that took me from live journal to fan fiction to archive of our own. That was the show that I was watching at the time and following along with. And that shift was pretty significant, going from like live journal boards and, smaller little community to, oh, this thing is hosted on this like major website that has millions of fan fictions on it. That shift was pretty significant.
Yeah, I feel like... Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to jump in and say I feel like my journey was different just because I read turned 18 and said, well, that's a teenager thing. You can't read it anymore. And so I didn't for a few years, 4 or 5 years. So I left when everyone was still on fanfiction.net, came back, and there was a new website. There was a tagging system I didn't know and didn't understand and didn't care to. And now...
Clearly.
And so I feel like my experience was I started on Quizilla, and then I went to fanfiction.net. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but there was a like adult fanfiction like variant called adultfanfiction.net. Read a ton of stuff there. Spicy. I shouldn't have been on those forums, but I was.
Rock and roll.
Hardcore. I don't want to say I'm hardcore, but But I feel like some of the stuff that I used to be reading was like I went back and reread something that was my favorite when I was younger recently, and it does not hold up. And I was like, fascinating. And I wondered how much of that was like the people that were like writing it were my age, and like the writing is very like much a teenager like kind of stumbling through what they know fan fiction to be. And I mean, like, there was sex every chapter kind of thing. Like there was an overabundance of sex. And now I feel like the fanfic community is a lot more nuanced. There's a lot of phenomenal literature, creative writing out there that again goes past what the canon or the fandom is doing. So it was a really interesting, like, night and day difference for me. I didn't get the cool, gentle transition.
I think it's also fair to say that what you might find enjoyable or might be looking for in a fan fiction changes over time, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Like, the fic I was reading at 12 is not the fan fiction that I read now at almost 30. But that fan fiction was still meaningful to me at the time. You know what I mean? So
right.
Yeah, that transition, it kind of makes sense. Like, the things that you're reading along the way will change.
I feel like you unlocked some like memory for me that I had hidden, because I kept thinking of fanfiction.net, and then when you said like smaller communities, I remember originally starting out, it was on like the onering.net, and then you would read all of your like Lord of the Rings fanfiction on their like forums.
Yep.
So it was, you're right, it was like really concentrated communities. And then, I mean, because of that, I've spent some evenings reading, there's like fanfic.net archive or something where, or there's some sort of archive website where you can read about all of the drama that used to go down in the sub, like, because I mean, if you know anything about fanfic, you know, like what happened in like the Harry Potter fandom with certain published authors now. I've spent a lot of time reading the drama on that. I'm not even reading the fanfic. I just want to know the like forum drama.
Same.
Yeah, like you just forget that those things like they were so concentrated between people. Like you just loved one specific thing, but because of that, it could sometimes become very like toxic. So it's nice that the communities have all been kind of like put together, and there's a little bit more of less stress, I guess, involved.
Yeah.
It's the ending of Mean Girls now,
Yes, yeah.
where all the cliques have been disbanded. Regina can play lacrosse and then
She
come
got hit
have
by
lunch.
a bus.
Yeah, it really took us getting hit by a bus first. Yeah, and I think it's important to note that like Archive of Our Own was created out of a need to protect and preserve fandom spaces. So there was the purges of the early 2000s where, fanfiction.net and LiveJournal were like outright deleting fan fictions.
Yeah.
And that it disproportionately affected queer authors, queer stories, and marginalized storytellers. And so Archive of Our Own came along and was like, we are going to create a thing to preserve fan works in perpetuity, so that way this doesn't happen again. And that shift has also been pretty seismic in terms of recognizing the value and importance of preserving fan works. It's also why Archive of Our Own is set up the way that it's set up. It's an archive, not a social media platform. So that has been a shift too.
Oh.
Yeah, right. And so, yeah, previous ways of distributing and communicating fan fiction relied on, advertisers and things like that. And Archive of Our Own doesn't do that. So there is a pretty big difference between how Archive of Our Own sort of keeps fanfic going versus other websites. I could talk about this like literally forever.
I love listening to this because it's a world like I don't live in. But as you're saying some of the stuff you read when you were younger, I'm like thinking back to like, as long as you've been reading fan fiction, I've been in the role playing stuff. Like thinking about the old stuff, I'm like, oh, that's really cringy, but like it made me who I am.
Yeah.
And now that you said that, I have now found for myself. I was like, man, I really wanted to see an American Horror Story Glee, and I was like, oh wait, someone's probably written it. So I have that pulled up now. So I've got that bookmark later.
The rule of the internet is if you dream it, it exists.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse.
So with things like that, with this stuff becoming a little bit more in the mainstream, do you have any thoughts or feelings on people taking their fan fictions and publishing them as something else? I know there was a recent one.
Well, I mean, 50 Shades is Twilight.
Well, 50 Shades.
Yeah,
there's
the
a
Twilight
Raylo
one. Yes,
Wasn't
there's
there?
Raylo. Yes, the
I think Ethan read
Allie
that one.
Hazelwood.
Yeah. What was that?
It's Love on the Brain.
Oh, the Love Hypothesis.
Yes, there we go.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. There's quite a bit of Raylo ones specifically that are being published going forward.
The
My buddy
tension.
Ethan loves those.
Yeah, Ethan loves Raylo.
So do you have any feeling? Do you think that's a cool thing?
I think it's a thing. I don't know that I have strong feelings one way or the other about it. I don't read enough published literature, I think, to have strong feelings about it one way or the other.
I would say that I think it's really hustle. Go for it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Make the money. Because again, it again goes to show that like fan fiction has so much value other than just the fact that it is fan fiction or that it has the like tag fan fiction. Like the Love Hypothesis, which is the one that is the most recent one, is so big right now. Like
it really is.
People are loving it. It's a romance novel that like, used to be a Raylo fanfic. And I wonder how many people like would have picked it up had they known that it was like, oh, if it was advertised as formerly fan fiction, how many people would actually have turned up? But being able to kind of strip that back and show the merit of it, I think lends more credence to the fact like there's other Love Hypotheses out there on the web for free now. You just have to go and look for it. And even better, it's with characters you already love, with worlds that you have already invested time in.
Yeah, and I think it's great that so many authors, like, it's a great space to, like, cut your teeth on writing and really just, like, figure out what characterization is. And there's already just, like, a preset archetype, and you can kind of just develop, like, what your style is specifically. So it's a great, I mean, I think, like, even, I think Marissa Meyer, who did the Renegades and a couple of the Chronicles of, Lunar Chronicles. I think Marissa got her start on fan fiction as well. There's so many authors that really, it's just whether they're known or not, are populating those spaces and putting excellent work out there.
Yeah.
I know I just said the Narnia thing is a joke, but the Chronicles of Narnia is a Jesus fanfic as well.
It is.
So, yeah, somebody is real horny for Jesus.
I wonder how many authors have written, like, how many books and how many published works are fanfic without us knowing it? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, historically.
There's got to be a lot.
Yeah, and if you really think about it, fanfic is a form of adaptation, right?
Yeah.
And so we've been adapting works and retelling stories and recycling stories forever. That's just how human storytelling works. So you could kind of make arguments that, pretty much any Shakespeare adaptation is a fanfiction. So, I think it's great.
he did steal that one story from The Lion King.
Yeah. Hamlet.
Right. Yeah, he stole that from Lion King.
Yeah.
It's better with the lions, though.
Yeah, and I think everything's like cyclical too. Like when something becomes really popular, you'll see a million. Like I remember when Twilight became popular, every single book that came out for a while, like for years after that, was like vampire love story. And even that alone, like it's not the same characters, but it's like adapting that genre and just creating your own thing from it. It all has like ties into that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to ask, what are some of your favorite fandoms? Like to read about? Like what are the ones you like? If there's a new one, you're going to read it.
I have a very easy set of answers to this question.
You may have already heard some.
Yeah, I mean, obviously The Magicians. Although right now I have cycled through a couple of different ones. The Magicians really just had me by the throat for a good couple of years there. Yeah. But the most recent ones for me have been Our Flag Means Death, Heartstopper, and now Stranger Things, specifically Steve and Eddie. I'm very deep on the steady tag on AO3.
Steady.
But those are the ones that I'm currently focusing on, I guess.
Nice. We overlap on the Heartstopper. I'm obsessed. I read a lot of The Song of Achilles, which it in and of itself is also fan fiction. It's an adaptation. So read a lot of that. And then again, I don't read a lot outside of what is sent to me because I just don't have time. So I do a lot of Naruto, do a lot of Harry Potter whenever the mood strikes.
And we both read Marvel. Pretty good amount of MCU. I gravitate towards Steve, just with anyone. Okay. Pick a character. And then Alan, you kind of also read a lot of Steve Rogers and Tony, I guess.
I do, yeah.
Bucky.
Just was a byproduct of the show is that I don't watch the Marvel movies. I'm not a comic book person.
Totally fine.
Except for Heartstopper.
So, you know what? Call me out. You're right. Yeah. Goodbye. I didn't come on the show to be insulted like this. Yes. I'm not a like superhero comic book person. When it gets to like, oh, well, if you read this variant of it, then I'm like, it's too much for me. I'll never catch up. But because Erin reads a lot of it and has sent a lot of it to me, I was like, oh, I really like Steve Rogers as just a character to plug in with people. I specifically like him with Bucky. I'm a Stucky fan. Stuck on Stucky.
I know that one. That one, that's in my world.
There we go.
We did we played a tabletop for years where it was Marvel, and I played Tony, and he ended up getting married to Steve. So I side with you there. But it is interesting, again, that you don't read it. I understand the variant stuff is like very confusing, but it is interesting that you read and like you like that stuff still. I love that. Like that makes me genuinely excited because like I know a lot of people just watch the movies or some people read the comics, but there is more out there. So as someone who like my entire life is dedicated to helping people find things that bring them joy and no matter what, it's exciting to see that things that I love are bringing people happiness outside of what I know. So
I agree. And there's no greater joy than like talking to someone who's knowledgeable about the fandom and saying like, oh, I really love this part. And then saying, well, you know that connects because of this. My mind is I'm always boggled. I'm like, wow, really? It's amazing.
So what's next for your podcast? What would you like to see in your worlds next? Like, what do you want to see in fan fiction and your podcast next?
Oh, a good question. We want to go to New York Comic Con. New York Comic Con, it's like we put in an application and we're still waiting to hear back. And I want to go. And that's kind of a joke and kind of really not. But we are focused on trying to actually like produce more episodes of our podcast right now. Something that we've come to grips with over time, and like in full disclosure, like we are not great at maintaining a schedule for posting and editing, and part of it is because we both have to work full time. We have other commitments. I have 2 jobs. It's like a whole thing, and so we're trying to figure out the balance of how do we do this thing that we love with also having to like live in a capitalist society that requires that you work for food. So like I would love to see us be able to create more episodes and do more and all of that kind of stuff. We went to DC Comic-Con, Washington DC's Comic-Con, and hosted
Awesome
panels.
Con,
Yep, Awesome Con. And that was so fun. Like, I'm so happy to be building up this little community of people who feel equally as sincerely enthusiastic about fan fiction as we do. We accidentally went viral on TikTok. And now
that's how I found you.
I know.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it was entirely accidental, but I imagine that that's going to continue to be a factor in the things that we do moving forward, is continuing to sort of exist in this online space and share in the joy of fanfic on that platform. So yeah, I hope we're able to expand a little bit and do more, and just sort of find a rhythm with it. I think that's where we're headed right now.
Yeah.
Are you East Coast?
Yeah.
We are.
So are we.
Yeah. That's why when you said DC, I was like, oh, Awesome Con?
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, we'll talk about that offline.
Yeah.
Great.
So, where can people find your show?
Alan, do you want to do the spiel or should I?
Oh gosh, you've got it down so well.
I know.
You know?
I know. So we are on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We are on really any major platform where you can find your podcasts of choice. SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, Audible. Somehow. And then you can also find us on the social medias. We are on TikTok. This is the order. Go to TikTok, then Twitter, then Instagram. Then Facebook, meh.
It's a myth.
It
doesn't
we
exist.
have it, but we don't use it. And yeah, if you have any interest in continuing the conversation with us in any of those are the platforms to find us on.
And it's Fic List on all of them?
Yeah, it's the Fic List on all of them. And then we also have a Tumblr account that is run by my light of my life, Caitlin, who runs that Tumblr, and it's really, really incredible. And that is the ficklistpodcast.tumblr.com. Got it eventually.
Nice.
Dan was very excited that you had a Tumblr.
Yeah, I saw it. I was like, nice.
Very excited.
That is the most fan. Like, I felt it.
Right. I mean, it would have been sacrilegious to not have a Tumblr.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I didn't know, so now I'm going to go follow you there.
Hey.
You should. Caitlin's fantastic. I mean, she just really curates that space, and I love it.
So you can find us at GateCrashers.fan, where we run analysis, reviews, and everything in between most days. You can find us on all social media at GateCrashersPod, and we will see you soon. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It's the GateCrashers.